Okay, so we're going to make a start then. So you're here for how to make your marketing more strategic, systematic, and successful in 2023. This is the result of over 7 years of experimentation. We started Digital Freelance on 1st of March 2016. We've revised and updated the content of this webinar or the slides for this webinar to include examples from an actual client case study. We've run this strategy probably for well over 100 clients now, and our strapline is small business marketing with guaranteed results. Our USP, 4 times ROI in 4 to 6 months. This is the strategy that we use to deliver on those results. And when we're taking on board a new client, we start with a strategy session, which we would normally do one-to-one, so we would dig in depth into your business. In this case, we're going to do it for a group, in which case it'll be more the overlying structure. We're not going to dive too deeply into any one business other than Insight 38, which is a case study that I'm going to share with you. Before I started Digital Freelance in March 2016, as I was saying, I ran an NLP training business for, I don't know, 7 or 8 years, I think. So we decided over some period of time that for Digital Freelance, we're going to niche down into trainers, coaches, consultants, and tech businesses, which is who we've been dealing with for the last 7 years. Before that, I also did some freelancing online, so there's quite a lot of experience gone into this. It's predominantly for business-to-business marketing, which is what we really specialize in. So the strategies and structures that we're going to share with you, they could apply to B2C, but they're predominantly B2B. So before we go further, I will introduce my partner in, not in crime, but partner in results, let's say, Zach, who's our apprentice. He joined us in September last year. He's doing a great job. He's got a role on this webinar as well. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Zach. I'll just pass the microphone over so we can hear him.
Hello. So yeah, it's great having you on today. We really enjoy getting to show you this because we personally enjoy doing it for our own work, and these questions in particular as well, as Graham said, they help us to dig a bit deeper. So then when we do build a strategy, or you build yourself a strategy from these questions, they're in line with your own views, but also your goals for the business. There's just a couple notes for the webinar. There will be a chance in a minute just to tell us a little bit about yourself. So if you want to raise your virtual hand, and then I'll unmute you when that comes up. As well, it is being recorded, but if you do speak, we'll cut that out, so you don't have to, a bit of peace of mind that you don't need to worry about that. And at the end as well, if you want to have a chat with us, feel free, as we like to get to know you a little bit better. So yeah, I think that's everything. So I'll pass back to Graham.
Brilliant. Thanks, Zach. So yeah, we'll have a Q&A at the end. The presentation normally takes about 40 minutes or so. So there'll be time left at the end for question and answers. As I was saying, this is based on real world experience. So we're going to talk through the steps in the strategy. I'll talk through the questions that we ask, and I'll show you the results that came from a specific client. I'll talk about that in a moment. In terms of the recording, we don't make these videos available public. We will only send them out to our email list, and as Zach said, your voice will not be on there. So yeah, it's all good. So you're very welcome. Just get the slides working, which is always a good start. So I think I've talked enough about me. So now's an opportunity to say a little bit about you. So if you want to introduce yourself, just tell us who you are, what you do, and what you want to learn from the webinar. And then I'll be able to orient the examples and the discussion towards your specific case. Just one more thing I wanted to mention. Before the webinar, we sent you a template, which basically has the steps that I'm going to go through in this strategy. So we are going to cover quite a lot in quite a short period of time. You might want to make some written notes. Either I normally do them on a sketch pad, but you could also type them straight into the template if you wanted to. If you haven't got the template, just say template, please, and we'll put a Google Drive link up there so you can download the template. So without further ado, let's see who's on the webinar. So this is the agenda that we're going to cover today. So there's 5 things. So the first thing, which hopefully will be exactly what you want to know, is define 3 different audiences to test on LinkedIn. We have found 3 is a really good number. Sometimes we use 4 so that you can validate the hypothesis that you're going to be testing, which is step 2, design your test hypothesis. Step 3 is get clear on your offer. Step 4 is gather the data to write your copy and design your creative. Step 5 is find the recipe for your secret sauce, which is really your unique selling proposition. So without further ado, let's dive straight in. So we normally start, we always start by baselining your starting position. So we measure 5 different things, which are going to come on the next 5 slides. The first one is crowd. So you want to take a baseline measurement. How many connections and followers do you have on LinkedIn personally and on your business page? The strategy that we use is based on sending connection requests from your personal page. We also recommend that you become a LinkedIn creator, which means that you can have followers as well as connections on LinkedIn, and gives you various other options like being able to do live audios if that's relevant for your market. We also check do you have a presence on other social media sites in case we can create some traction between different sites. YouTube in particular is often relevant for LinkedIn. So in the first part of the template, there's a box there for your crowd. So you would complete that for that step in the process. So the next step is capture. So once you've built a crowd on LinkedIn, you ideally want to get them into your email system or CRM. One thing to be aware of on LinkedIn is that you have a one-to-one inbox with a person. It's not like email. So if you send too many messages, it starts to look a bit like spam. So we normally have a heuristic of between 4 or 5 messages directly to the inbox, in addition to the content, which I'm going to come on in a moment. So this step is to specify how many email addresses you have in your system. For some people, if you don't have a CRM yet, they may be business cards that are stuffed in drawers or in your inside pocket or in your trousers or wherever you keep them, or in a carry bag. In the case of some of the clients we've worked with, you'd want to put all those into your CRM and also possibly upload them to LinkedIn, which you used to be able to bulk upload. Now you have to send the connection invites one-to-one, but it's definitely still worth doing to create some consistency between your email list and your LinkedIn connections. In our case, I have about 10,000 LinkedIn connections. We've just upgraded to Team LinkedIn. So now Zakai and Wendy, who's our graphic designer, are all building connections on LinkedIn. Then we can send slightly different messages to those people. And our email list is about 400, I think 360 at the moment, but it varies between 350 and 400. We keep our CRM pretty tightly controlled based on certain criteria. So having a big list, we found, is nowhere near as valuable as having a responsive list, a small responsive list. So yeah, we keep, so I guess roughly that is 4%, so 400 out of 10,000. So we've got 10,000 connections on LinkedIn, we've got 400 in the CRM. So that's baselining your starting position. Step 3, once you've got the crowd and you've captured them in an email system, then the next step would be conversion. So the question to ask there is, have you made any sales yet? How many clients do you have? Do you have a sales process, which is really key when you're using this kind of lead generation, to have a really good way of converting them? For a lot of SaaS businesses, it could be a demo. Most B2B sales happen by appointment, by a one-to-one conversation with someone. Very rarely will B2B be an e-commerce sale, and if it is, it'll probably be low value. And also, what are the top 5 objections to your sale is really key to identify, so that you can inoculate against those objections through your content and your messaging. I'm going to come back to that a little bit further into the presentation. So step 4 is cash value. So one of the things that we found is that there are several patterns that we've seen in the niches that we work with. So some people go free, 10K or some huge jump. What you want is a nice on-ramp and a nice, what Ryan Dice and we call a tripwire, which is a lowish value offer, so that the person can try out what you do before they actually pay you for more of the value that you deliver. Ideally, for most clients, we would have the initial conversation be free, but the tripwire we charge something for. In our case, we charge 156.25 plus VAT for our tripwire, which is the strategy session. It varies quite a bit depending on industry. Then it's not ideal. This is the best way to do it, is to have a product ladder. So you start with the tripwire, then core product or service, then profit maximizer, and calculate the lifetime value. So you can calculate what the acquisition cost, what allowable cost per acquisition you can make in order to acquire a new client. I'll go through the maths of that as we go through. So that's cash value. And then finally, continuity, which is how long do your clients stay with you on average, and how many times do they purchase from you? So they're the questions that we ask. That's the first step in the template that I talked about. This is an actual example from a real live client. They were a client that we onboarded them, I think, last March, something like that. So in this case, the business, just to give a bit more insight, as it were, they are a data dashboard and reporting organization who outsource reporting on data and business intelligence. So when we started, the business had 79 LinkedIn followers, I think, for a business. Ricky, who was our client, had 1,500, but in this case, for various reasons, he wanted to start from a brand new profile. So we started from 0. There was also a YouTube video, which is the Insight 38 demo, which had 24 views when we started. They had no email list because they're an Australian company just moving to the UK. No purchasers at that time. The cash value that we're testing is between 2 and 3K a month for the data dashboard provision. And all you can eat data is what they call it. And then continuity was the average duration that we were testing the hypothesis on was 12 months, which gives you a lifetime value of 24 to 36K. So that's the first step, measure marketing by numbers. So the next step is creating your audience on LinkedIn. What we've found conclusively, we've tested this really extensively, is the most precise search term on LinkedIn is job title. If you know the job titles that you're targeting, if it's CEO, CTO, COO, for example, you can find them much more easily than searching on keywords. It's not very effective. It's a very broad search. Job title is much better. Industry is also useful. With the automation software that we use, and actually in LinkedIn, there's a limit of 2,500 connections before you go over 100 pages. So we recommend the initial audience to be less than 2,500. Geography, we normally start in London and then broaden out. Years in current position, if you're looking for startups, we would do less than a year, or 1 to 2 years in current position is a great way of finding, and job title founder, which gives you a great way of targeting the right people. As LinkedIn is a network, so you normally be targeting, we normally start with second connections because they're much closer. And then there is no direct metric for revenue in what I'm describing here as an organic strategy, not paid ads. So the organic strategy, we use a metric, a heuristic of 1K per head, 100K per head as a heuristic for turnover. So 10 headcount would be $1 million in that instance. It's a heuristic, it's a rule of thumb. It's not necessarily accurate, but it's a good starting point. So in terms of the headcount bands, you have self-employed 1 to 10, 11 to 50, 51 to 200, 201 to 500, 501 to 1,000. So we normally target somewhere within those bands. So here's a real example, coincidentally, pretty well what I just said. So for this particular company, Insight 38, we were after startups and scale-ups, CTO, CEO, CIO, CDO, Chief Technical Officer, Chief Executive Officer, Chief Information Officer, and Chief Data Officer, and Director of Operations and Finance for these headcount bands. And the industry that we started out testing to are the ones you can read here. So for direct, they were looking at fintech, crypto and computer software and retail. And for referral business, consultancies, independent business development managers, geography, London to start with. This is the hypothesis that we started out testing. What we actually did is slightly different. And we're not going to cover it in this particular presentation, but if you want to, please type in the chat, please send me the case study, and we will send you a case study with what we actually did. This is the start of the program, of the project. Sorry, the other numbers are at the end of the program. So what we actually did, and it's really important to respond to the feedback that you're getting from the market when you're doing this kind of marketing. So that's the audience. So the next bit is the test hypothesis. So the test hypothesis is used to baseline the numbers and also to create KPIs against which you can measure. So what we measure against is number of connection requests, number of first connections, number of content nurture touch points, number of conversations, number of appointments, number of deals. We have some very precise metrics that we use for our campaigns. So basically, we aim to send up to 4,000 connection requests to get 400 first connections, which is a good number to test how good your sales process is. You would expect that would be, so one deal out of 400 would be 0.25% conversion rate. If it's less than that, there's something wrong with the offer or the audience or the copy. Number of content nurture touch points. We normally do content every 2 or 4 weeks. Because we're driving the audience direct to the copy. Anything more than that is too much. Then we track the number of conversations. We do automated reach out. We also do a manual reach out to a percentage of the connections that we make. Then we track the number of appointments and the number of deals. That's a fairly classic sales funnel. This is the specific hypothesis that we tested for Insight 38. So in this case, we were aiming to get 10 appointments in 4 months and one new client, first new client based on a 20% conversion rate in 3 months, one more by the end of 4 months. This is actually slightly lower than what we normally test on. We normally test in 25%, which is an industry standard metric for sales teams. So this is a visual funnel that describes the whole funnel, starting from LinkedIn second and third connections through first connection, nurture them with blog, case study to and other content to a conversation, and then book an appointment. So this is the next step, which is step 3, get clear on your offer. So we use what we call the statement of value method. Our whole approach is based on transformational marketing. So we use the statement of value method to determine the transformation that you offer and to create a gap between where the client is now and where you can take them to, in which you can sell. I'll show you the statement of value method in a moment. We also use value proposition canvases to work out the jobs to be done, pains and gains. And it's really important to articulate the benefits of each of the steps in your sales process. So you need to articulate the benefits of your appointment, or sometimes what we recommend is getting the process nailed down one-to-one before you do it on a group level. The group level could be through a webinar, for example. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the different products in the ladder all need to have their own statement of value. And then we also recommend creating a simple pitch deck, which we've done for several of our clients, which can then be recorded and either sent as a Loom video or as a post on LinkedIn. And then, as I said earlier, prove your first conversion, which is really key. You can't scale something that doesn't convert. It doesn't make any sense at all. So you have to prove the first conversion. Once you've done the first conversion, then you work out the metrics to get there, which is where the metrics that I mentioned earlier came from, based on a certain order value that we calculate on. So this is the statement of value for Insight 38's professional data service. So before, lots of manual work, information silos, inaccurate data. Afterwards, it's automated. It saves time producing data manually. Gives a single version of truth, which means there's one set of data that everyone can rely on. We've calculated this with a client, and then we use this to write the copy for the campaign. So that's how the client will the problem that the client will have before you interact with them, and the solution that they will have after they've interacted with your product or service. Feeling is really important in a sales context. Even if you're selling B2B, there will still be emotions involved. And in order to get the sale, it's really important to elicit those emotions. So you can see the before and after here. And then we've got average day, which is diving more deep into what they're doing on a day-to-day basis, before and after interacting with your service. And then status uplift is really, really important in terms of creating tension in the copy to describe the transformation clearly. So I mentioned earlier about the top 5 objections to the sale. So this is part of the information that goes into creating the content. So these were the specific objections that we identified for Insight 38. And we also tested these different price points, which I think I mentioned earlier. If you know what the objections are, you can come up with the solutions to that objection. And if you raise them in the content that you produced before you actually get to the conversation, you've already kind of you've already prepared the ground for the actual appointment. So this is really, really key to the way that we do things. And then your USP, your secret sauce. What makes you unique? What change do you seek to make? How do you enroll people into the transformation you provide? And how do you create a network effect? These are really key for scaling. And in our experience, it can take a while to figure out what the USP is. Just a clue, it will very rarely, if ever, be price. Price is the last resort of a marketer who hasn't figured out what makes them unique. So that's the USP. So this is the USP. This is the initial USP that we discussed with Insight 38. As we moved along, it developed a little bit. But the USP was a unique service model, fixed fee subscription service to look after all your data, business intelligence, and analytics. And that came from the Australian end of the business. And then, so the 3 variables are audience, offer, copy. So now we're getting to the 3rd step, which is the copy. So in order to gather the data to write the copy and design the creative, we use the statement of value method that I mentioned earlier. We also use the story brand framework, so you can build in the hero's journey into your copy. Highly recommend writing the story first, then designing the creative around the story, not the other way around. Check that it's consistent. Really important through the whole process that everything flows easily and consistently, which can be quite hard to do if you're really deep into it. So that's sometimes why it's good to have an objective perspective to make sure that it all flows easily. And particularly for the tripwire. We normally have our clients test the tripwire on us as a client so that we can give them feedback on how well articulated that is, because that's where the client transitions from being free to paying, and we combine photos and graphics, as you can see from the slide presentation that I'm going through now. Step 5, track your progress towards success. This is really key. I've mentioned several times what I've shown you here is the hypothesis and the initial data that we gathered at the start of the project with Insight 38. I think we worked with them for 8 months, maybe 9 months. So that changed substantially as we went through the project. And as I said, if you want the case study, please feel free to ask for it. So that's tracking your progress, really important. So I'm just going to close with, I know that was a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but it'll give some time to answer questions. So are you ready to make your marketing more strategic, systematic, and successful in 2023?